In today's episode of Quick Chat, I speak to Kristina Flickinger, VP of Marketing at QIO, who shares her journey from an admin role to B2B marketing expert, focusing on the psychological aspects of marketing and the shift to data-driven strategies. She highlights AI's role in optimizing efforts at QIO, refining customer profiles, and building relationships, while also discussing hiring practices, imposter syndrome, and the future of marketing in an AI-driven landscape. If you found this helpful, leave us a like, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hey, Kristina, appreciate you taking the time to be here. Really excited to talk to you. I guess to start off with, I'd love to understand a bit more about what initially sparked your interest in marketing and how you found yourself in this career.
Yeah, definitely. So, I actually fell into marketing. It wasn't something that was planned from my perspective. I actually fell into the B2B space. I was actually working as an admin, and doing some business development for a SharePoint
Okay.
provider back in 2007, 2008. But my journey with marketing didn't actually start until I moved across to Boston in 2009 or so. And I had dropped out of uni, and
Okay.
I was entering a market full of very, very intelligent kids
Mhm.
coming out of uni from Harvard and Tufts and whatnot. And I was wondering, how am I going to get a job with my skill set? I had been majoring in English and
Sure.
drama. And I was given a temp opportunity to work for a workforce management company called Click Software at the time.
Okay.
I was supposed to file some HR paperwork, and I think it was a 3 or 4 day job. And I was in the middle of doing this HR paperwork in the HR office, and the marketing manager came in a bit of a panic because their marketing intern had walked off the job.
No.
And so the HR director had actually read my resume that was sent over from the temp agency and told the marketing manager that actually I had the skill set for the job. They hired me on the spot, and that was my entrance into the world of marketing in B2B technology. I wish, my teachers and other career professionals had recognized that I would be quite good at marketing because I love to
Mhm.
write. I'm quite creative, and whatnot. But I can always credit and thank Click Software for giving me that entrance into marketing. And one of the most amazing things about that company was that they were very horizontal in the way that they trained their employees and the exposure that was given.
Mhm.
My manager, Simon Morris, who's now at Adobe, he gave me tons of exposure to the business as a whole. So I was able to try my hand at pre-sales. I was exposed to product roadmaps. I was exposed to multiple things at that point of time, which as a baby marketer was so important because that's really what helped me to learn and to grow. And was able to establish a social media plan for them at the time, which was in the infancy of social media for B2B marketing, and try my hand at creativity. I was involved in planning a customer event, and all of those things helped shape my future as a marketer.
Wow, that's amazing. And that sounds really interesting. And I guess you got a lot of exposure from such an early start too. I'd love to know, because you mentioned you kind of fell into marketing, almost how your passion for marketing's evolved over the years, specifically in the sector that you're now operating in.
Yeah, I think the passion stems from the fact that actually marketing is essentially psychology, really.
Hmm.
It's the psychology of understanding humans and why they buy and how they buy, and what's the best ways to engage with them. And I think marketing over time in B2B has fundamentally changed. So when I started, and like I said, at Click Software, so Click Software, we had HubSpot. HubSpot was just a
Right.
blog platform at the time, right? So it
Hmm.
was the ability to create blogs. It was just scratching the surface of what inbound marketing was,
Right.
and how for the first time you could bring leads to you, and that you weren't going out in a traditional fashion, an outbound fashion,
Hmm.
and Blair horning your product or services to
Yeah.
people. That has fundamentally shifted over the time that I've been around, in marketing, and the fact that from a content perspective, we had, inbound starting in its infancy with blogs and whatnot, to this overzealous creation of inbound bound marketing, and content strategy, I should say,
Mhm.
which then, of course, increased the need for performance marketing, for
Mhm.
marketers then chasing their tails and rapidly trying to catch up with the Google algorithms.
Yeah.
To then really there being this shift and drive that marketing 100% needs to be a revenue generating part of the business, rather than
Mhm.
a a cost base to the
Yeah.
business. And I think that also drove this massive demand to have marketing be driven directly by KPIs, by
Mhm. Mhm.
data, etc. And that I find fascinating, because of course there's always a massive element to marketing that is data driven and should be
Mhm.
data driven. But fundamentally, if you go back to the concept that marketing as well as a psychology, not all of it can be measured, and not all of it can be explained or measured in ways that are effective for a business. And so I think over the next couple of years, we are going to see more shift in marketing. But to go back to properly answer your question, the reason why I've my passion's grown is that marketing is ever evolving. B2B marketing is so interesting because it's a laggard to B2C marketing.
Mhm.
Not as innovative, it's not as creative, it's less, marketers in the B2B space take less risk.
Mhm.
And so it's, how do you, follow the B2C trends? How do you keep up with innovation? How do you keep up with the buying mentality of the B2C buyer, the general persona, which is everyone walking around on the street? And then how do you apply that in an effective way for businesses? And so I think that's where my passion has continued, and where I have continued to enjoy what I do over the years.
Perfect. No, really appreciate that answer. It does sound really interesting. I'd love to know as well, almost about a bit more about your role at QIO now, and sort of understand a bit more on the space. So what you guys do and what challenges you solve specifically.
Yeah, definitely. So QIO leverages advanced AI
Mhm.
to provide sustainability and energy efficiency solutions in the market. So our two core ideal customer profiles are enterprise businesses that run
Right.
large data centers and have a large server estate, and industrial businesses that have challenges around energy efficiency. So that would be industrial manufacturers who run
Mhm.
energy intensive furnaces or boilers, or any other energy intensive assets. So we focus primarily on the energy intensive sectors.
Mhm.
And what we do is that we offer AI tools that optimize energy usage, which
Right.
in turn also helps to optimize operational activities as well. So our AI tools are used primarily in data centers at the server level.
Mhm.
So what we do is we look at C states and P states at the server chip level, and those are not actually optimized when they're shipped by the chip
Right.
manufacturers. So our solution actually real time dynamically adjusts these P states and C states to optimize from an energy efficiency perspective. Um, so the the chips then are put to sleep. The
Mhm.
C states and P states are put to sleep when needed, without affecting the performance of the servers, and therefore there's an increase in energy optimization there. So you're saving energy on a high level of around 30%.
And you mentioned there that you have sort of two key ICPs. I'd love to get a bit more of an understanding of how you're continuously refining those ICPs, and almost how you also look for the behaviors and signs for people that would make a good fit to investing in your product.
One of the things that's been interesting for me this year is that um, we we're a little bit premature in our go-to-market strategy.
Hmm.
And we hadn't fully developed, what is our ICP. And that's just merely because that, especially in data centers, the data center space is complex, right? So you've got your
Right.
hyperscalers and you've got your co-locations and then you've got your enterprises running their own data centers. And they all have, differing priorities and similar priorities, but at different scales. So we tried to really delve into what is the ideal customer profile in quite a bit of complexity. So looking at, okay, so what are budgets, right? What are geographies? What are their need to buy? And in the course of this work that we were doing, we actually were wondering, are we overcomplicating the ideal customer profile? Because actually, fundamentally, when you look at your value proposition and you look then at what your unique selling points are, you have a much bigger TAM than you might imagine, or than what you think is your serviceable addressable market. And so therefore, it's that sort of question is should your ICP match your TAM, or should it match your service addressable market?
Hmm.
So we actually made the decision to make the ICP less complex. We
Okay.
looked at the business as a whole, and we looked at how do we operate as a business. We looked at what our value proposition for our two solutions were. We looked at our unique selling points, and we said actually there should be the four core things that our ICP is based on. The profitability
Hmm.
of the solution from a business perspective, which is, we need scale to our product, right? So
Right.
you need to say that you need a certain number of servers or a certain number of assets that you're
Hmm.
optimizing. Geography, right? So we're as a small business, we operate in the UK, EMEA, and North America. So that
Hmm.
needs to be our ICP. That's where the customers that we sell into. And we need to look at the problems that our solution addresses. But the problems that our solution addresses is everybody in the TAM, right? Everyone has issues with energy optimization, and everyone has issues with ESG, right? As environmental issues become more and more complex, as
Hmm.
there's more issues with adjusting to the compliance and the regulations that are being introduced. And so we picked those four things, right? So geography, size of the business in relation to assets or servers, um, the pain points that they solve, but knowing that that's an easy one for us.
Hmm.
And then the last one that we picked from, who is our ideal customer profile, was then the budget perspective.
Right.
So looking at what is their IT spend or budget. So we kept it simple, and in my opinion, that makes sense. Of course, your ICP is going to be different depending on the organization you're in. So I've been in organizations where, you make a very clear ideal customer profile and you do it as a quadrant. So you've got your ideal customer profile, you've got your good, right? You're okay to sell into, and then the people that you want to avoid. And that's because with different solutions that might be more complex or have different pain points they're solving, that you can actually fit your product into a customer that might be an okay customer, and then you just have to look at different strategies to land and expand or make your product stickier if you want to then move into those areas.
And just on that as well, when you made the decision to kind of refine the ICP, make it more simple, and you talk about those four key elements as well that you decided on, do you take a data-driven approach to determine those requirements, or how were you guys going about developing those four key requirements for your ICP?
So in this instance, it was very much based on voice of customer. So we
Okay.
conducted some voice of customer research. We listened to what companies were saying and telling us,
Hmm.
and we based the ICP based on that data and from the anecdotal data of the companies that we're in conversations with and talking to. Of
Hmm.
course, it's different in different organizations. QIO
Sure.
had been around a few years, and so there was enough of that voice of customer, and
Right.
there's enough of that research to make that deliberation. It's very different. So, for instance, in my previous role at
Hmm.
Halfords with Availer, you were entering a space, field service management or automotive field service management,
Hmm.
that already existed, and so therefore an ideal customer profile already existed out there in the world, but then you have to hone it obviously to
Right.
your solution and solution set. So I think the key input into your ideal customer profile needs to be a voice of customer,
Hmm.
market research, an understanding of your product and solutions,
Hmm.
and also a look to the future of what could your potential future ICP be based on product roadmap, trends, etc.
Absolutely. And you touched on your work at Halfords as well. And I guess for people that don't know, you've obviously facilitated the strategic launch of one of their SaaS divisions there. I'd love to know almost what goes into that, and if you could walk me through how you develop their go-to-market strategy as well.
Absolutely. So, just to give a bit of context and background, obviously Halfords is the biggest automotive and cycling retailer here in the UK, listed on the London Stock Exchange,
Hmm.
and they had gone out to market in the late 2000s to look for a garage management solution.
Hmm.
So when they started to acquire garages for automotive repair, they knew that one of the core strengths for Halfords would be that they provided a digitalization journey for people looking to get their cars repaired or getting MOTs, etc. They went out to market looking for a solution that would work to allow customers to engage online, book their
Hmm.
cars in, and to have that experience with them. And they couldn't find anything on market, out in the market that worked for them. So they decided to develop a homegrown solution that would allow customers to do just that, to book their cars online, to have a full digital vehicle inspection, meaning that when the car was taken into the garage, that customers could actually see what was going on with the car, what repairs were being done, and they could actually select online which repairs they wanted done, and approve all of that in an online digital way. So
Sure.
that was developed internally. They also acquired a business called Tires on the Drive, which provided mobile services, such
Right.
as tires, etc. So getting your tires changed, replaced, etc. They also had built their own software which managed end to end the whole digital journey of you order new tires online, you get a technician to come in and fit those tires for you straight on your drive. um, they realized, during
Hmm.
the COVID period, especially when digitalization became so important, that they had a unique solution there, and they wanted to take that to market and provide that to other automotive retailers and other automotive service providers. Um, I had experience in the field service space, so I was recruited in, having understood what the type of solution it was that they had in house.
Sure.
So my hire and my goal when I came into Halfords was to help the guy who had set the SaaS business up, to take this product to market. So the main beginnings of that was understanding what's the why, right? And that's essentially
Hmm.
that story that I just told. So
Hmm.
what made Halfords different? What was the why behind the solution? And it was an easy one fundamentally, right? Because right there and then you had a perfectly trusting why. You had a company that's been there and done that. They built a solution because it didn't exist in market for them. It was working very well for them, and the proof was in their great NC NPS scores, and their great Trustpilot scores. It was working, in-house. So you had a perfect use case and case study for it. The why was they wanted to make automotive servicing more trusting, more visible, and better for customers. So once you have established the why, you've established the value proposition, which I've kind of mentioned in the
Yeah.
USP. From there, it's just about then how do you package that? How do you make that something that's easily digestible and purchasable for customers? So that bit of setting up the go-to-market was not a challenge because you had that story there. What was an interesting challenge is that doing that in a traditional retail environment, which isn't a normal startup mentality, which, normally you've got your investors, you have time to perfect the product, you have time to set up a team and to do that. And probably, everyone says startups are fast paced, but retail is also extremely fast paced.
Okay.
Doing that at the pace of retail. So that was an interesting challenge and really unique from my perspective to be able to do that in a space that I hadn't traditionally been in previously.
Yeah. So how did you overcome that challenge of the time constraint then?
So I think this is the same with any situation I've been in. I think I've been in large enterprises with big budgets and lots of resources, and I've been in smaller organizations as well. And I think the main thing it's not prescriptive, it's just don't have an ego.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so I think that's the most important, right? Is that I've been very lucky in my career. I've had a nice career trajectory. I've sat on executive leadership teams. But what's most important is that no matter what, you don't have an ego. You are willing to roll your sleeves up. You're willing to get your hands dirty and understand that your knowledge, your skill sets, and your basic tactical abilities will be needed to get things done. And it's having the pride in making something work as well. So I think that's really important, is that you have your own personal ownership of the business that you're working for. So I think that's key. And then the other thing is being agile, right? And being
Sure.
responsive. And then also understanding, I think sometimes marketers feel that they need big budgets, they need costly campaigns, etc., to make impact. And actually, you can do the same with less by looking at the priorities and reprioritizing, by driving the priorities based on what ROI you're going to get from day one. And then I think the other thing that isn't mentioned, because it's not a necessarily KPI or number, is it's also a lot about the relationships you create. So
Sure.
which drives urgency. So if you talk to the right people and you understand the people that are driving the needle forward and you create good relationships with those people, then it makes it a lot easier to get things done quickly, more agilely, and often, more cost effectively as well.
Talk to me a bit more about those relationships. Is that internal stakeholders or is this with customers?
It's internal and with customers as well. The joke I always say to my kids, and I say to my, any of my employees, etc., is that you have to find the right people, that are the right relationships. And people often joke, you know who are as executive assistants, receptionists,
Hmm.
and that's both internally and externally. If you want to have a good client relationship, you be nice to the executive assistant
Yeah.
of the person that you're trying to sell to. They know everything, and they have much more influence than people give them credit for. And so it's not just nurturing relationships that you think are important or that might be important in the CRM. It's noticing the whole ecosystem and the people that help to drive things, which often are the ones or the people that aren't given credit. But so that's my first always bit of advice. You always are kind to everyone at every level, and that kind of goes back to that whole concept of no ego, right?
Of course.
I'm no more important or less important than any other person working for any
Exactly.
business.
Absolutely.
And I think then the second thing is then it's finance. So as a marketer, your best friend is your CFO, and that relationship is extremely important, right? So being able to demonstrate value as a marketer, show that you can be a profit center for the business, but also, being completely transparent, having that synergy with finance as a marketer is important, and I think sometimes overlooked.
Definitely. And you touched on something as well that's really interesting, obviously the relationship with the CFO and also your experience of delivering results consistently across differing budgets, and the importance of almost prioritizing your channels. I'd love to know how you go about prioritizing channels that do deliver ROI on day one.
So it's first about understanding the existing data, or what is there in existence. So drilling into the current
Hmm.
data and what has been done, and picking out the discrepancies, understanding what various campaigns have been done, what avenues have been tapped. I think one of the mistakes that people do, and when I've gone into businesses before, I've seen this, or I've seen other people come into a business, is they make a lot of assumptions, and they make a lot of assumptions based on just the data. So,
Right.
so while I'm saying you analyze the data, you have to analyze the data in context, because
Sure.
there might be a reason why the business has decided to do things. I've had, a couple of people come into businesses under me, or as other colleagues, that are very quick to say, the website's so ugly. I can't believe, I can't believe it looks that terrible, or I don't understand why, we're bidding on these keywords or whatnot. And I think that you have to look at the data, but you have to get the contextual understanding of why and where the business has been. And it's that combination that then gives you a starting place. I've been in a couple of businesses before where actually there's been nothing in place. That's always a bit easier then, right? Because if you have no data
Sure.
to work with, you start by doing A/B testing from the beginning, and then
Hmm.
you pick those keywords or those campaigns or whatnot that give you more success from a data perspective. So that's a
And
lot
I,
easier.
and I guess when you're building something from scratch as well, or even when you're stepping into a business that already has sort of processes in place, how are there any sort of staple strategies that you have in your marketing playbook, or is it completely dependent on the context of the business?
It's always completely dependent on the context of the business. I have my two key playbooks, I suppose you would say,
Sure.
are one for managing people, and then the other is around. I'm obsessed with Simon Sinek.
Okay.
Everyone has their couple of influencers, or marketers, or people,
Mhm.
that have influenced the way that they act in business, and mine is him, and especially his circle, his why. So just for context, obviously, he says the most successful businesses operate not off their what, but actually off of their why. And even in
Sure.
2024 in businesses, I see so many businesses today, especially considering the rapid development of technology and AI. You'll see a
Hmm.
lot of AI businesses that clearly are operating off the what and the
Hmm.
shiny, right? This is the shiny of the what are we selling, not why are you selling that. So if we're talking playbook, I think the core thing I do in every business is either help to establish the why, if the why hasn't been established at all, or hone the why to make sure that it is the right why for where the business is at in this day and age. And then everything comes from that. So once you understand the why of the business, then you get to the how and the what, as Simon Sinek says. But for me, the steps are, then you establish the value proposition, and when
Hmm.
a value proposition has been established, you should always be going back to your value proposition and making sure it's still relevant, that it's still key to the business, and that it's still doing what it needs to do to ensure that the buying persona wants that product. And then
Hmm.
USPs. So it's then from there you've got your foundational pillars, which is your unique selling points.
Sure.
Then everything can be consistent from that, right? Everything can be based on that. So when it comes to a playbook, that's where I always start with any business, is making
Right.
sure that that's established and in play.
Absolutely.
The other aspect that I use as a playbook is the way that I manage. So I've come
Hmm.
into businesses before where I've inherited teams, and then I've come into businesses where then I've built teams, and I use the same playbook for all of those. I do personality testing. I'm a big believer in personality.
Okay.
Um, I have, a very strong personality. And
Hmm.
as I've learned as a leader, it's understanding people's core drivers and why they do the things they do, and why they act the way that they do, that helps you to not only be able to be a good manager and understanding those motivators, but actually to help with growth as well, and ensure that you're doing what's best for motivating people and moving them forward in their careers. So I do that with everybody that I employ, or that I've inherited, and then I run a series of exercises around that, that then I continue to do throughout, their time, in the marketing team.
So when you're looking to hire, for you, it's more attitude than aptitude when you're looking
I
to
think
hire
I
someone.
think a lot of marketing skill sets can be taught,
Okay.
right? Whereas, but the attitude can't be taught.
No.
It's one of those things where everybody can look at reporting in HubSpot. Everyone
Hmm.
can understand to a degree, how to put together a campaign, or
Hmm.
how to write an effective email, or even to write website content. All of those things are
Sure.
things that can be taught, trained, etc. Um, Having the attitude of being excited about marketing, having an attitude where you're collaborative, that you don't have a problem with checking with your colleague, do you
Hmm.
think that this works from a workflow perspective? um,
Hmm.
those type of things can't be taught. So I do think that, especially in the division of marketing in a business, that attitude is very much key to, for hiring.
And how do you test for that? So you mentioned a few exercises. You to kind of walk me through that.
So I do those exercises after they've been hired. So
Okay.
one of them is I have them give the elevator pitch in each other's
Okay.
personalities. So it's a demonstration that they understand some of the things of each, or differences in people's personalities,
Sure.
and then it's a bit of fun around, our goal is to be able to give the elevator pitch, right? Everyone in marketing
Hmm.
is be able to say what is our value proposition, what's our
Yeah.
elevator pitch, off the bat. So it's a bit of fun. But from a detecting the attitude bit on the side, which is, in recruitment, obviously it starts with the job description, and
Hmm.
making sure the recruitment agencies and et cetera are briefed on what's needed. But it's also, just understanding answers to the questions that are given, during the interview. People can have lots of changes
Hmm.
in jobs, or there might be things that people would question on paper.
Sure.
But it's all about the way that people answer those questions, or the story behind that. And that, to me, I think is how you identify that, because it's very clear to see, based on various answers, what sort of attitude you might
Hmm.
get from an employee. Mm.
Absolutely. Something that we've spoken about on a previous call was the fact that you've been part of leadership teams where you were the only woman. You had to deal with strong personalities as well, and you potentially face some imposter syndrome. Could you unpack that a bit for me?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I mean, I think imposter syndrome isn't just isolated to being the only woman
Sure.
in B2B. So I'll separate those two out. I obviously, I had, unfortunately, sadly, had to drop out of uni. I have had a varying and differing career, right? So I've not been 18 years where I've grown in a business or whatnot.
Hmm.
Um, And one of the things I've had to learn over the course of the past 15, 16 years is that it doesn't matter what your trajectory is, as long as you show up every day and you care about the business you're working for, you care about the people that you work with, and you're making a positive difference to the business and to the P&L, of course. And because there's been a lot of times, and I think everyone does it, right? You scroll LinkedIn or you're turned down for a job or whatnot, and you're like, why am I not good enough? Or
Sure.
you're not a good fit necessarily for a business that you join. I was sadly during COVID made redundant at one point, and so all of these things are things that that sometimes make you question your value or your worth. And I think in a world of social media and the world of LinkedIn today, it's very easy to do. So I think it's really important to go back to the root of why do I do what I do, and how do I positively affect the people around me and the business, and also find the right people in business that will give you that positive mentality. So I'm not going to pronounce his name properly, so I'm just going to say, so he's the ex head of social from Gymshark, and he went
Sure.
on to start his own business.
Hmm.
And I follow him on LinkedIn, and I absolutely love his message and what he says, to the community, and the advice that he gives. And it's finding those right people. I also mentioned the guys that started Surreal, the new cereal business. So it's finding those types of people in business, and understanding the positive message that can be given to you. Just to touch on the woman in business perspective, I do think that there is, unfortunately, right? We all know this. There's still a pay gap. There's still a lack of women leadership, especially in the technology space, especially in B2B. And it is a challenge. I think, I have been in rooms where I've been talked over, where I have been ignored, where partially I'll think to myself, is that because I'm a woman, or was it, something else? And it's always hard. It's such a thin, invisible line to differentiate. And the things that I've learned to do is one, find your allies, right? So I have had some amazing male allies in business that do stick up for me, that do realize when it's an issue,
Hmm.
from a perspective. I'll give you an example. So,
Sure.
at a company, we were looking at values, and we were
Hmm.
looking at what to what do we want our company to represent, and a couple of the guys were insistent on using the word obsessed.
Right.
So obviously, as the resident marketer, English
Mhm.
major, etc., um, I was pretty adamant that obsessed is a negative term, and we didn't
Yeah.
want you to represent that as a value. And it was very much a who speaks louder, right? So we had
Okay.
ended a meeting, with, no, we are absolutely using the word obsessed. We're using the word obsessed. And I had a colleague that rang me afterwards, and he said, I sat down with my wife that evening because I found it to be an interesting meeting, and it was, there was a lot of back and forth, and there was this passion about this one word.
Hmm.
And I didn't understand why some of these guys, were so passionate about using the word obsessed. And when you had advocated that it wasn't, it was a negative term. And
Yeah.
she said, yeah, it is absolutely a negative term. It's a negative term in society, and it is a negative term, especially for women. And he said, so I had that conversation with her, and I just wanted to recognize that I think it was a very much male versus female thing. And
Wow.
he said, I'm going to have a talk with my colleagues, and just mention that actually, they probably should have listened and absorbed
Hmm.
and heard the feedback you were giving. That's an ally right there, right? That's someone that's
Absolutely.
recognized that there is a dynamic there that's different, and he wasn't offended by it, and he wasn't challenged by it. He
Hmm.
actually went and understood that there was a dynamic happening, in a situation. He went and got clarity on it. He did his own work, his own research, and he came back and didn't make it my problem to solve. He
No.
he took it on himself. And that's really important, having those type of people around you in business or anywhere in life. But it's also just, making sure you're heard, speaking up, and understanding that's okay, right? There's no such thing as bossy. You're just a boss. So
Yeah.
so it's just remembering that.
No, absolutely. No, I completely appreciate that, and that's obviously it's terrible what happened in that meeting too. I guess going forward as well, I'd love to learn a bit more about almost how your marketing strategy is evolving over the next few years. And something we've touched on was technology, AI. Are there any other trends that you're keeping a close eye on as well?
I think it's going to be a really exciting time for marketing over the future. We talked a little bit about the past and, the influx of content marketing and the fact that B2B is lagging in the space. AI is going to be a best friend and the worst enemy, I think, for marketers. So,
Okay.
what do I mean by that? So, I think AI is going to make marketing a lot more efficient, right?
Mhm.
Things like figuring out what are the best keywords to optimize on, um, you know, uh, placements, setting up workflows, that sort of thing. It's going to make marketing much more efficient because there's a lot of marketing that's still quite manual.
Mhm.
But the problem also is that people are going to get lazy, I think, because of AI. Content is one of those areas, right? And I think Google, Bing, etc. may start to penalize content that is AI written or
Mhm.
that they detect as AI written. So you have that challenge then of what parts of marketing do you optimize and make more efficient, and which parts do you not, because you'll lose the authenticity and effectiveness of marketing in the first place. And I also think that there's, again, it's one of those fine lines because people want personalization and
Mhm.
customization, but they don't want to feel violated.
Yeah.
That is a new, you know, that is a new emerging issue of where do you find that balance as a marketer, which is that you are making the buying easier for somebody. You're
Mhm.
making the whole cycle of sourcing information, of understanding products and solutions, of those types of touch points in a way that's effective for each individual in your ICP
Mhm.
without violating their privacy. And how do you
Absolutely.
manage that? And I think um, that's another area where AI is going to be massive because the way that people are searching, the way that people are sourcing information, and the way that people are going to buy is fundamentally going to change. And I think more so in B2B than B2C because it's, if you want to buy a mascara
Mhm.
or even a Porsche, for instance,
Sure.
you have multiple mediums to do
Mhm.
that quite quickly. When you're trying to source a complex product or solution that's multi-millions for your business to improve your
Mhm.
business one way or another, um, there's different channels and there's a longer information cycle. So how does ChatGPT and Gemini and others come into play there? If search is changing,
Mhm.
how do you help as a marketer to develop that? How do you help to inform these AIs so that your product or solution is easy to buy, easy to source, etc.?
Absolutely. And I think even me now, I hardly use Google anymore. I use ChatGPT. I use a few of the tools that you mentioned. I use something called Proximity AI,
Mhm.
which helps me find articles online as well. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see whether there's going to be a new SEO, which is like AI optimized
Yeah,
keywords and things
yeah.
like that as well. Yeah.
And then the question becomes actually, do you sit there now and hone in on getting everything from a channel perspective right traditionally now,
Hmm.
right? Because if you think about it, obviously Gemini, proximity, etc., they get their information from somewhere.
Hmm.
So is it actually about ensuring that you've got it right now with the
Hmm.
traditional ways that we market in 2024, or is
Hmm.
it actually looking to the future and understanding, oh, actually, what should I be building, some apps off ChatGPT? Should I be training these modules? What should I be doing? Models, not modules.
Hmm.
Should I be doing something different in my marketing now, or should I be working to make sure I have the basics perfect first?
So what are you doing?
So I'm doing a combination
Okay.
of both, and I think for me time and resource constrained at the moment. But I think that businesses of all sizes and shapes need to be looking at both, right? So the
Hmm.
having your foot on the pedal and going straight for now, but also figuring out, what is that path, and I think making sure that there's some sort of mapping going on to what are our plans for the future, because if we even look at the way that people buy B2C, and we look at the adoption of channels like TikTok,
Hmm.
B2B is low to the gate, and
Hmm.
you have to remember that those same people, right, that are those B2B buyers are B2C buyers, right? They're on their bathroom break, in
Exactly.
whether they're in the office or working remotely
Yeah.
on TikTok, right? And they are also using ChatGPT to tell their kids. That's what I do. I tell my kids that something that's happened in World War II or whatever, and they're
Hmm.
see ChatGPT is um, so they're engaging in all of those ways already. So the B2B marketer, I do think, needs to wake up and figure out what is going to be that innovative approach, and how do you again balance that privacy versus bringing your product to the table challenge in the future.
100%. Christina, I really appreciate your time. That was a really interesting discussion. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.